This is Pastor Jeff Chavis for coming to you from Southern Nevada, specifically North Las Vegas, Nevada. I am the pastor of Church Online. We're this unique online community of faith. You could find us at churchonline.com, but we spell that uniquely CHRCH because we say all that's missing is you. We're at churchonline.com. This morning, of course, it is Good Friday. Now, I recognize when I say Good Friday, there are some people who, question, was it Friday? Was it a different day of the week? I know that's not the important part. The important part is not the day. The important part is the cross. We remember Good Friday as that day Jesus was on the cross. Just the dramatic and yes, tragic events of that moment. And there's no better thought that we could have than to reflect on what Jesus did on the cross. So that's what I want us to focus on today. But I want us to focus on a single individual who was there. We recognize that his disciples scattered. John came, some of the women came. We imagine that most of the disciples at some point, maybe they looked on at a distance and they just saw this horrible image of Jesus on that cross that day. But there were others surrounding him. One particularly was a centurion. In fact, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and we're going to read from Luke's gospel in a moment, they all talk about the centurion. Now notice that it says the centurion as if whoever this centurion was, they knew who it was. There are some scholars that think Luke writes and he says that there were eyewitnesses that he spoke to. Some have suggested that maybe this was one of Luke's eyewitnesses, was this centurion. So let me read to you the passage, and I want you to reflect on what that centurion witnessed that day. It starts out here. We're in Luke 23, start in verse 44. Now it was about the 6th hour, and there was darkness over all the earth until the 9th hour. Then the sun was darkened, and the veil of the temple was torn in two. When Jesus had cried out in a loud voice, he said, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. Having said this, he breathed his last. So when the centurion saw what had happened, he glorified God, saying, Certainly this was a righteous man. Now let's pause there. Luke puts that emphasis, and he says he saw what happened, and it changed him. It also says, so when the centurion saw, the little word so makes all the difference. Jesus cries out, into your hands I commit my spirit. There's darkness over the earth. Now it says the veil of the temple was torn in two. Don't imagine he saw that, because he would have been at the cross and the temple's on the other side of the wall. He would never have been allowed to go into the holy place and the Holy of Holies. He wouldn't have seen that. Now, according to Matthew's gospel, there was also an earthquake. Whatever this man saw, it had an effect on him, a profound effect. Just remember what centurions were about. We get the name centurion from a century, and the understanding is they were in charge of about 100 men. It could be more, could be less, depends on what unit he was in. But this man was in charge of these battle-tested Roman soldiers. In most cases, you didn't become a centurion unless you've been in battle yourself. So these men have seen a whole lot. So when Luke says the centurion saw what happened, it just lets us ponder so many things. He's there as Jesus breathes his last. He's there at the 6th and the 9th hour. He saw the darkness. What else did he see? Did he see that interaction that Jesus had between the two thieves? Today you will be with me in paradise. Did he see them nailing Jesus to the cross and Jesus saying those words, Father, forgive them, they know not what they do? Was he there before? Was he there to witness the crowds yell, crucify him? Was he there as they scourged Jesus? Was he there through any of the times that Pontius Pilate was questioning Jesus? We just don't know all of the details, but we could ponder so many things. But the greater question is, what does it take? What does a person need to see, witness, understand, experience that changes them from a person? And by the way, a centurion would have been a pagan worshiper. Most centurions, in fact, almost all centurions, you would give your allegiance to the gods of the Roman government. And that would be a whole different way of thinking than suddenly coming into this understanding of who Jesus is, the Messiah of Israel, the one who is going to take away the sins of the world, the Lamb of God. But what is it that you see that day? Again, what about us? What have we seen? What have we experienced that draws us into that closer relationship? What have some of our friends, family members seen, witnessed, understood? What is it going to take for someone who is far away from God, like a centurion? What is it going to take for them to see something that will turn them into someone who would proclaim, certainly, this was a righteous man. Certainly, there is something about this man that is different than any other man I've ever seen, I've ever encountered. What is it about this death on the cross that is different? The way it says it in Matthew's gospel, and this is in Matthew 27, verse 54, it says, his statement is, truly this was the Son of God. He makes a proclamation that would make us believe that this is now a follower of Jesus. So, as we get ready to turn our hearts to prayer in a moment, maybe that's the question we need to ask ourselves. What have we seen? Because I believe that as Luke, as Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, all of these gospel writers show us, the one thing that we need to be able to do is share the things that we've seen Jesus do. Share these things with people that do not know him. But also, we have to ask our friends, what have you seen? What have you experienced of God already in your life? Because that is so important. When we're having that discussion with someone, I've had many discussions with people about their faith, and normally an individual will tell me some kind of story of some sort of an encounter they've had that they believe was from God. You'd be surprised. Even the person that you think is farthest away from God, again, the centurion who is a pagan worshiper, seen battle with his own eyes, been in some really tough places, but when he looked at Jesus, there was something different. And then that person you know in your life, the same way. They've seen so much, they've experienced so much. What do they need to know about Jesus? What do they need to hear? What do they need to see? What do they need to experience? Now, I understand it's not seeing is believing. I recognize that. But there are people like this man. Maybe there's people like you or me. We've seen something that strengthens our faith or maybe starts the spark